Hello, I'm Elizabeth Denham, the UK Information Commissioner. I'm responsible for both data protection and access to information law here in the UK. I'm also the chair of the Global Privacy Assembly, a group formerly known as the International Conference of Data Protection and Privacy Commissioners. More on that a little later. So, buenos dias. Thank you for inviting me to speak. And apologies that I cannot be there in person. And, of course, I won't forget, I'm bringing you greetings and saying Happy Data Protection Day. And I think it is a Happy Data Protection Day. The data protection world has perhaps never been a more challenging one. The digital economy has the ability to improve our lives, to even extend our lives. And much of that is fueled by personal data. Alongside this growth in the use and reliance on personal data, we've seen a growth in people's awareness of their information rights. And I expect a lot of you in the room will have seen that change firsthand over the past year or two. Citizens have higher expectations than they've ever had before, and people are increasingly aware of their rights, asking privacy questions about everything from wireless speakers to democratic elections. And so many of the big international issues, the big discussions, have a central privacy element, from cryptocurrencies to keeping children safe online. So whether your role is as a regulator or a data protection officer, whether it's on the legal side or on the policy side, I'm sure that you're being kept very, very busy. But I think it's a Happy Data Protection Day because we, as a community, have never been more equipped to respond to those challenges. And that's what I want to focus on today. How our international partnerships are helping us to improve and protect information rights. The change in attitude that I've seen in organizations as they take greater responsibility around personal data. And how data ethics could prove central to the next phase of data protection work. So first, on international partnerships. Last year, I had the privilege to be in Tirana, Albania, along with data protection and privacy commissioners from around the world, including your commissioner president and my valued international colleague, Francisco Javier Acuna Lamas. There was an Albanian proverb that I learned there. He who leans against a big tree will always find shade. I think that's very relevant today. The digital economy brings challenges, the speed of innovation, the appetite for personal data, the demand for our views. But our international partnerships bring solutions. The Global Privacy Assembly is the big tree that we can all lean against. Our membership includes more than 130 privacy and data protection authorities from across the world and represents views from all corners of the globe. Our conference brings together the key thinkers in our sector, members, observers, and the broader community. The progress that we made at last year's Albanian conference will make sure that we can all continue to benefit from the shade of that tree. That conference saw the members put in place a framework to protect, shape, and support people's rights around the world. We all know that consumers in Monterey, Monaco, and Montreal suffer alike when a big digital company gets data protection wrong. And so the GPA has endorsed a move to strengthen regulatory cooperation, paving the way not only to sharing best practice, but potentially sharing lines of inquiry. Facial recognition technology, for instance, is a subject that's being looked at by regulators around the world, by governments around the world, and businesses around the world. So it only makes sense to share our thoughts and ideas. So the message here is, watch this space. We want to be a group that supports one another year-round and has a voice year-round. So do keep an eye on our website and on our social media. And of course, we're coming to you. The 2020 GPA conference will take place in October in Mexico City. I, for one, am very excited about coming back. I was fortunate to attend the last International Data Protection Commissioners Conference in Mexico City in 2011, and I can't wait to come back to your fantastic, colorful, historic city. That feels like a very good reason to celebrate Data Protection Day. Another reason to be positive is the changing attitudes of organizations towards their responsibilities to personal data. The digital economy moves at a dizzying pace and on an international scale. That, of course, brings challenges. How do we police phone apps that are launched in every country around the world simultaneously? How do we apply data protection law to innovations and ideas that weren't even considered when the legislation was drafted? And how do we protect consumers when some aren't even aware of their rights and others are happy to tick boxes hurriedly to give their agreement to terms and conditions that don't benefit them? One answer might lie in the changing attitude I've witnessed over the past few years in the organizations themselves. It's fair to say more and more organizations want to get data protection right. There's a legal requirement to do that, but there's also a business requirement. Headlines about data breaches and cyber attacks are bad for business. In the UK, we host a conference venue every year that's filled with data protection professionals who want to handle people's personal information in a positive, in an ethical way. And I know this room today is full of people with a similar ambition. For every company that suffers a data breach prompted by insufficient training or poor policies, there are 100 who are just quietly protecting people's information and following the law. At the center of that is accountability. Accountability means organizations considering, recognizing the risks that their data processing is creating for people and mitigating those risks. And it began largely in Canadian law and has since traveled internationally, notably as one of the key upgrades that GDPR brought. In the UK, we've still got further to go until concepts like data protection by design and true fairness in data processing feel fully established. But I believe that we're heading in the right direction. And I'd like to finish by talking a little bit about data ethics. I think it's fair to say data ethics is perhaps the emerging area of data protection right now. And it feels like an area we can all benefit from listening to. I mentioned the GPA earlier. A couple of years ago, Giovanni Bertorelli, the European Data Protection Supervisor, who sadly passed away last year, organized our annual conference around the theme of data ethics. Giovanni welcomed us by explaining that we were not at a privacy or data protection conference, but rather, he said, a conference about the human values that underpin privacy and data protection. And I think that's a very neat way to look at data ethics. The human values that underpin privacy and data protection. And it's welcome too that our GPA conference in Mexico City later this year will take this emphasis on human values as a starting point for its theme. The theme is privacy and data protection, a human-centric approach. Data ethics is something that increasingly has a role in legislation as transparency or fairness provisions, but it's also something that allows us to find common ground between differing laws, because I think ethics can give us a basis for a shared conversation. Take facial recognition technology. Last year, my office stepped in to consider the legal implications of an area of London using facial recognition technology in a public place. And we wanted to investigate whether this data processing complied with the GDPR. Internationally, other regulators are dealing with similar cases. But we struggle to compare notes. The GDPR is only common across the EU, and a broader view shows different laws and different attitudes to state surveillance. So perhaps data ethics gives us some common ground, an acceptance that there's a balance to be struck between privacy and security, and an acceptance that in a democracy, such a balance should follow some level of social discourse, of public debate. It's an area that needs more exploration, but perhaps data ethics provides a common lexicon for more conversations. Conversations between businesses and regulators, between the state and citizens, and between regulators from different nations. Such conversations are crucial. At the core of good data protection lies human values. Listening to people, understanding their concerns, respecting their views. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me today, and I very much hope that some of the thoughts that I've outlined have been a valuable contribution. And I look forward to hearing the contributions of many of you when I'm in Mexico City later this year. Adios and gracias.